What's up guys? My name is XANAA and hi, how's it going? I hope you're having a fantastic 2023. Best of wishes, luck, and this is my Need for Speed retrospect video of all the classic Need for Speed games I've done reviews on the channel, and at the end of the video I'm gonna be sharing my thoughts and feelings, which one do I like the best, which one the worst, and so on and so forth. That being said, one thing I did want to quickly discuss is, why is Motor City Racing not on this? Why is V-Rally not featured in the video? Why did I decide to include Hot Pursuit 2? It's pretty modern compared to the other Need for Speed games in the video. Well, I think that V-Rally and Motor City Racing Online are too obscure to really feature in the video, and as for Hot Pursuit 2, I still don't think it gets enough coverage on YouTube, and that's why it's in this video. And that being said, let's get into it. So anyway, welcome back. Today is a bit of a different video. Unlike any of the previous videos I've made, where I have a ton of experience playing a game, or perhaps it's little to none, today I'm going to be looking at a game that I've never played before. I'm going to be going back to a time when I wasn't alive and review the game that basically started a franchise well beloved today. For the most part. I'm talking about the Need for Speed, the one that started it all, the pioneer! Need for Speed came out in August 31st, 1994 for multiple different systems, with its first release being on the 3DO, which is this thing. It's a home console. I'll be looking at the DOS version released for the PC, which came out somewhere in mid-1995, and from what I'm aware, there are a few differences with each other release. I'll be playing this game off the DOS emulated version, as copies of this game where I'm from come by far too few, and when they are available they cost a fortune, so yeah, let's start this puppy up. Well, it's working as expected. Although I didn't think I'd be greeted with all these options in my face right away. The PlayStation 1 version actually has a really neat UI menu and has everything pretty nicely packaged. However, I don't own a copy of this game for my PlayStation 1, so I'll just be displaying some snapshots as shown on the screen. Anyway, we can select one of the following 8 vehicles: a Ferrari 512, a Lamborghini Diablo, a Porsche 911 Carrera, a Dodge Viper, a Honda NSX, a Mazda RX-7, a Toyota Supra, and a Corvette, which I think personally has been mugged off the most. I mean, pick your poison, a car with 200 polys or one with 50. Whilst selecting each vehicle, you can view some vehicle specs the game provides to you, along with other information, although none of the videos work for me for some reason. Even though I'm looking at this game 27 years after it came out, looking at the specs of these vehicles is a nice touch. My favorite of these cars definitely is either the Carrera or the Ferrari, but that's just me. Then, as you can see, we can pick one of the 7 different locations available for us to race on. 3 of the locations are broken down into 3 events, those being City, Coastal, and Alpine. Other tracks, which consists of actual circuit style events, are either Rusty Spring Speedway, Autumn Valley Speedway, Vertigo Ridge, and the track which you usually have to unlock, Las Vegas. From what I'm also aware, there are 2 other courses available when you play the special edition release, along with a rally course. However, it's only just a texture swap from what I'm aware. And upon entering a cheat code or winning the tournament, you can unlock the Warrior PTO E2, which, yeah, is this bonkers futuristic vehicle. If we go to options, we can select one of the 4 different game modes available to you. Single race is simply a one-off event and you can pick any event or track to your avail. There is a tournament mode, which is basically, it tallies your points through each event. Both these game modes have you playing against 7 other AI players. Then there's a time trial mode, which is basically you just challenging yourself for a personal record. And finally head-to-head, which is essentially just a 1v1 against the CPU. This time, however, you're driving in public traffic against them on these point-to-point events I spoke about earlier. There are also cops that will chase you, however, if you crash into something or they pass you, you get arrested and have to pay a fine. You can then immediately carry on racing, though the CPU will likely be gone. Speaking of which, this game is a little challenging to me. The CPUs are what you can expect from a game that came out in 1994. Sometimes they're a bit strange, but often or not they are pretty competitive. Anyway, along in the options setting, you can select your control mapping. Now, as I'm playing this on PC, I'll just be using a keyboard. WASD to control my car and E to shift up. You can also handbrake, although I forget this option usually exists. I'd personally say these cars are a bit heavy to steer, and as in most of the footage you can see, I have a hard time slowing down in order to make the corner. Also, there's a cockpit view, which if you press C, you can adjust your camera controls, although these look like direct images taken from the real-life counterparts of these cars. I can imagine if you were really young or like when the game was released, at the time this must have been really pleasant to look at though, with all the speedometers reacting to your gameplay. As for how sound goes, a lot of it is pretty simple, but I can't ask all that much. The rock music on the main menu keeps restarting the moment you select a different option, and the music stops altogether during races. But again, this might be a difference the DOS emulator version ultimately makes, and I know that the special edition version actually has the music playing in each event and other modes as well. What's up guys, my name is XANAA, and sorry to interrupt the video, however, this is actually a point in my video I'm incorrect about. Throughout the entire game there are audio issues, and on the main menu here, every menu, every screen that the game takes you to is supposed to have a different menu song to it, which was wrong with my game's copy, it didn't have that. So sorry for the inconvenience in advance. And another thing I want to address is that all the engine audio is also incorrect in the game. They all use the Dodge Viper engine audio for some reason, and I guess what I'm trying to tell you here is that my game had audio issues, and every car that you can drive in the game is supposed to have different audio to it, like different engine audio. So I just wanted to address that quickly. There is also some techno music here, and there appears to be more soundtrack to this game, which I'm guessing the special edition probably includes. As for this game's appearance, I think it's aged decently. The only games to predate this game that we can really compare it to is either Super Mario Kart, Outrun, or various Formula 1 games. Whilst Super Mario Kart came out in '92 for the SNES, I don't think it's fair to compare Mario Kart to this game. Outrun came out in '86 and was basically sort of their only real arcade racer at the start, and well, most F1 games focused on trying out a more realistic approach rather than an arcade racer. I'd say the only other games that somewhat came close to an arcade racer would either be Daytona USA or Sega Rally Championship, which came out a few months after Need for Speed. So I would say when it came out for PlayStation in '94, it was pretty revolutionary and a huge risk as this genre of games hadn't hit the market yet. But I think the gamble paid off and made way for more to come. Eventually, in the second half of the 90s, the racing game genre took off to the point that in March 1997, we got a sequel to The Need for Speed, called The Need for Speed 2, which we'll be looking at in the next video. However, let's take a look at the grand scheme of things here. The Need for Speed came out in 1994 when three-dimensional graphics were being experimented on and were just starting to hit the market. So, as a whole, can I still recommend you this game in today's day and age? That's a tricky question. For one, accessibility to this game isn't the biggest, as it isn't released on any other consoles outside from the devices I mentioned earlier. This game isn't on like Steam for you to purchase, and getting a physical copy might be a little tricky. Not only that, if you wanted to play this, to me the most ideal way would be you owning either a PlayStation 1 or 2. If you want to get a legit PC copy, you could get one provided to you that it doesn't cost £1 million. Like, Jesus Christ, right now I'm just not in the position to spend this amount of money for a game I'll maybe play for 20 minutes. There are a few cheaper copies that don't cost as much, but I'll pass for now. I guess you could buy the very first original thing it came out for, the 3DO, which is just like a video game console that didn't really take off, and there is the Sega Saturn release. Yeah, I don't need a Sega Saturn in my life right now. But back to what I was saying, can I still recommend you this game, or are there just better alternatives? Well, I myself didn't grow up playing these games, but I do think it kickstarted the genre. While the OG Need for Speed got a few re-releases after its initial release, in 1997 the second game came out, which I won't be covering here, but already looks like a somewhat promising improvement on the surface. So then, let's start off with what comes close to looking like the Need for Speed in the 90s, I guess. In 1996, there was the release of Sega Touring Car Championship, which is mostly known to be an arcade game. It was also ported to the Sega Saturn and PC upon later releases of the game. And what you're looking at is an emulated version. I think the PC release looks a little more optimized, but I couldn't find a PC copy. I think it's a pretty decent looking game for its time. It of course has a few flaws. I mean, the controls were awful when I played this and extremely arcadey, so yeah, take it for what you will. We had Daytona USA 2, which came out in 1998, which, I mean, it's not a huge game. Again, with that put to mind, this is an arcade game that later saw desktop releases, but it looks and functions really well. I myself have played the legit arcade version and approve of this project. Though it looks really good for a racing game released in 1998, and it's nearly 24 years old, so it obviously isn't perfect. Sega Rally 2, which also released in 1998, is primarily for arcades, but is again one of those games that later had a PC and a Dreamcast re-release, and it's basically your very standard simple late 90s racing game. This one focusing on the rally aspect of motorsport. As you can see, the game I think is ridiculously arcadey again, but you know, I sort of love it for how cheesy it is, and it's by no means unplayable. Test Drive Le Mans, which came out in '99, is obviously made to simulate real-life racing, and thereby is a racing game focused entirely on the 24-hour of Le Mans in France, with your objective to complete each category available. Whilst I'm mainly talking about this game to compare it to the Need for Speed, obviously I think this is a game that was more made to compete against Gran Turismo. It came out for both PlayStation 1, 2, PC and Dreamcast, which I think are the better looking versions of this game. These also exist, but I think they definitely don't hold up in terms of graphics. Racing Lagoon, which came out in 1999, was also a game I quickly wanted to throw into this. I don't have much to say, I've never played this, but it looks like it has some qualities that kind of stand out. Colin McRae Rally 2.0, which came out in 2000, is again just a game I wanted to quickly talk about, and it's a rally game, nothing related to Need for Speed, but I think it looks pretty cool and it aged really well other than the slippery controls, but I think everything is put neatly into this package. And lastly, the elephant in the room, Gran Turismo was released exclusively to the PlayStation 1 in 1997. Now, this isn't a Gran Turismo video, so I'm going to keep things relatively short. The game obviously took 5 years to make, and the development for this game was pretty brutal. However, all of it was ultimately worth it, wasn't it? When the game was released, obviously there was nothing really that came close to the standard it set. Now, for more info, I can highly recommend you watch this video of Colourshed for a more detailed and streamlined experience talking about Gran Turismo, but yeah, obviously Polyphony were successful as Gran Turismo became the most selling game for the PlayStation 1. And if I had to recommend Need for Speed or Gran Turismo, then well, I think Gran Turismo has aged much better and was the best of its time when it came out. But by no means do I think that makes the Need for Speed a bad product. I don't think I'll ever play this game unless I need to capture footage for it or maybe something else, but as a product that is nearly 30 years old, I think it has aged pretty decently. If you still have your PlayStation 1 or 2 lying around and you have a copy of this game, then fuck yeah, play it. You know, it's kind of hard to really play over something like Gran Turismo, but it's Need for Speed, hell yes. So, play it if you have it. So, with that, and a pretty dogshit opinion from me about this game, I mean, I didn't grow up playing this game, I have no nostalgia playing this, but I definitely do, like I don't know what you expected from me, but I did enjoy playing this. I had fun with it, and I enjoyed myself playing it. So in the last video, we looked at the first game in the franchise, the Need for Speed 1, and today we're going to be looking at the sequel that came out in 1997, Need for Speed 2. So strap yourself in, cause like in the last episode, this is another game I've never played before. Right, so Need for Speed 2 came out on March 31st, 1997 for the PC and PlayStation 1 and were developed by EA Canada and EA Seattle. Both games look the same on a gameplay perspective, other than that the PC release has a different HUD to the PlayStation version and it has more AI players. My guess would be that EA Canada probably took the lead as they did with the first game when EA published it. We're gonna be looking at the PlayStation emulator version as... yeah. For starters, I think the intro is actually pretty sick, and the main menu is a huge improvement compared to the last game. And that will be sort of a main talking point in today's video. We got game setup, location, player car, opponents, race, and options. In the options section, I've set up my controller settings in advance, but in case you're wondering what it is, here you go. So we got single race, tournament, and knockout. There's also an arcade and simulation setting, and keeping it on arcade means we're keeping it nice and simple. When you select it to simulation, you'll get to mess with the car's performance manually. Single race is just your standard select any track to your avail whenever you please, and when you beat an event, there really isn't a reward. But in tournament, however, it's more of an objective to finish each event in order, and it locks you out from doing anything else. The challenge is to become champion of each event, and lastly, we have the game mode Knockout. It's again a Grand Prix style of setting where you're doing a total of 7 races back to back, and each player in last place of each individual race gets eliminated from the Grand Prix. Then we get to courses of the game. There's a total of 7, all including 2 different soundtracks. So for the first track we got Proving Grounds, a 5.1 kilometer track in Norway, supposedly right next to a fjord given the icy climate outside of a course. This is basically your tutorial stage and it's nice and simple. I'll also start talking about the feel of the game here. While overall I think the feel of the car is better in this game than it is in the first game, in the Need for Speed 1, it's usually just kinda a shot in the dark for me as how well things will go, but in this game, I actually feel more in control. When braking in a corner though, it can be very tricky as your car will be put into a power slide kind of state. Fighting the car here can be a little difficult at times, but I have the least difficulties dealing with it in the F50. I never really use the handbrake, and sometimes it's better entering the corners just letting go of the gas. But anyway, next up we got Outback in Sydney, Australia, which is a track with a length of 7.5 kilometers. You start in the city and you have these twists and turns. It's not really a big deal, but then you get to the Outback section into the desert and there is this huge ramp. Now, due to how this game's controls are, even a ramp like this can be really tricky to navigate through properly. Upon landing, you usually have to fight the car in order to prevent yourself crashing into this wall. The rest of the track is fine though, and usually I climb back to the CPU ahead of me. Next up we've got North Country in Northern Europe. The game actually never tells us directly where the track is located, but if I had to guess, it'd be either in the north of Switzerland or south of Germany, as the in-game announcer tells us it has an autobahn. In the south of Germany there are also mountains, and both countries are German speaking, so yeah, take it for what you will. Anyway, this 7.5 kilometer track is a bit more of a roller coaster, as we start off with a double lane public road and enter this amusement park, followed by a rocky section. We then enter a small town where you have this very conveniently placed bridge. Yeah, some sick bastard thought this was a great idea. Over the entire course of the track you're actually constantly braking and making these sharp turns, and it can be hard for the player, as how earlier I described that these cars can be a bit of a pain in the ass to manage when braking. We then move on to some grasslands where we also have this turn. Yeah, great. Not a lot of fun. We then enter a tunnel, a forest, and another tunnel, and that's the track. Next up we got Pacific Spirit, a track in Canada that's 8.1 kilometers long. This track is pretty narrow, basically everywhere, and I kept crashing at this section of the course, due to just not being able to nail the braking point. The seaside portion of the map is nice though, and you'll even hear some seagulls in the background, but overall I like the course and don't have much to say. It's nice. Then next up we have Mediterraneo in Greece. It's a 6.5 kilometer track that starts just at a hill directly down the city. So this track has you seeing the city and then some scenic landscape, but the course itself is pretty batshit crazy. First off, we have a section of the town that's just like, this kinda really sucks. When exiting the town you're gonna want to keep it on the road, because the second you go off-road you're being launched into the sky. I have no idea what they were thinking, but this is a feature, I suppose. Then a little down the road we have another bridge section where, you guessed it, you're gonna want to not do whatever is happening here. Then we get to this tunnel and oh my bad. I kinda thought this was a ramp, similar to how there was one earlier on the track. So sorry. But most upsetting of all, later in the course, there's just columns, and they're just put into the ground like that. What sick bastard thought this was a great idea? Anyway, that's it. That's really it, and you get to the end of the lap. The track overall looks pretty beautiful, but kinda at the expense of gameplay. Right, 2 more to go. Mystic Peaks in Nepal is next. It's a 7.6 kilometer track, but don't let that distance fool you. This track is insane. You're starting off at this little village, and from there on out it's just mountains, caves, ramps, and whatever else. For the first half of the track it's literally impossible to drive at like fast speeds, and some of these ramps are a little unforgiving, as in you can't really see what's ahead of you. I honestly do like the challenge, and in some corners of the track the game is quite forgiving, but most of the time you're dying, that's what's up. I also do think the track is quite unique and visually appealing, so I don't know, make of this track what you will. And lastly, we have Monolithic Studios in Los Angeles. It can be unlocked by winning the Knockout Race series, and this track again follows the theme of just being some insane, mad track designed by the developers. We start off outside of his neighborhood, it's nighttime, nothing much, and then we enter this building and we're in Old Town Road. Then we enter some space colony kind of section, followed by some futuristic road in the sky, and there's buildings around us, and what a way to top it off by one last trip to the clouds. As the bend follows, we enter a nice grassy swamp-like area with the Loch Ness monster chilling in the background, and there's several of them. And then we also got some UFOs, of course. I mean, why wouldn't we? And just as you thought it was done, we enter a burning factory to round off the lap. That's it. All of these stage themes are meant to be referencing different films, and a lot of these do look like stereotypical movie scenes from like any Hollywood film, but I wouldn't have ever guessed that if I didn't look that up, to be honest. In the special edition version, there is also a Mexican track. It looks like this. But we're playing the PlayStation 1 version, and so we'll look at that another time. Anyway, let's talk about the vehicles in the game. Let's start off with the car I drive the most, the McLaren F1. Now, I would probably say that this car is completely overpowered. However, you know how earlier I mentioned when braking you go into like a power slide and it's kinda hard to maintain your car on the track? Well, that's where I kinda have a few struggles with this car, but otherwise, it's my go-to option as it's just simply too fast. Second off, the car we have on the cover. The beautiful Ferrari F50, which I probably have played the second most. It is by far a bit slower, but I think it has better handling than that the F1 does, as how I mentioned earlier, whenever you land or brake into a turn, you're kinda sliding everywhere. Each car also has its own in-game graph displaying its stats, but I don't know, bro, you can tell me whether or not they're actually accurate. Then next up we have the Jaguar XJ220. Always been a childhood favorite car of mine, always loved it. Yeah, it's a big thumbs up. Then we have the Lotus GT1 and the Lotus Esprit V8. The GT1 was meant to compete in GT1 classes against the likes of the McLaren F1 GTR and other Le Mans type variants of endurance vehicles, but it didn't really work as they didn't have enough resources, and the Esprit is just a fantastic car, look at it, yeah. Then we get into the prototype vehicles that only really existed as concept cars. We got the Isdera Kommandator 112. That one, it's meant to be this German concept car that never came to be. I don't know, I kinda don't like the front of it, but the rest of it looks pretty cool. Then we got the Ital Design Cala. It was meant to be this Lamborghini twin concept car type thing. It just kinda screams Lamborghini, whichever way you look at it. And we have the Ford GT90, which later went on to become the Ford GT. We also got the Ford Indigo, which is the only other unlockable thing in this game. It's meant to be a futuristic type of roadster car and destined to be a classic. Yeah guys, that didn't really happen. For the first time ever, you can also change the color of each vehicle. There is like 16 different options you're limited to, but it's a start, and then the settings option is what allows you to change your car's performance. In this little sub menu over here we have history, and it will just show you some of the car manufacturer's most iconic vehicles. We have slideshow, which will just show you a few images of the vehicles that are in game. I can imagine this being quite nice, as in 1997 you wouldn't have really gotten thousands of images of these vehicles if you googled them. And when we select video, moving on the menu we have opponents, which will allow you to adjust the difficulty of the opponents, and you can change the grid to just be a 1v1, have the entire grid just drive one specific car, or everyone driving random cars. You can also set it to no one, in which this kinda just becomes like a time trial mode. Race is just how you'll finally start the action, and in options we can adjust our control scheme as I told you earlier. On this emulator it keeps undoing my saved inputs though whenever I reboot up the game, so I just kinda have a save state placed here permanently. In audio we can adjust the sound setting, it's as simple as that. Memory card, this is kinda irrelevant, we have save states. Credits is self-explanatory, and in passwords... No. No. Hell fucking yes! So these passwords allow you to become a various amount of different stage items, whether they are pedestrian vehicles or stage props. This is amazing. Now, depending if you're playing the PC version, special release, or PlayStation 1 version, you get different cheat codes to your avail. I think it's hilarious how I can drive as a Mazda Miata in this game and it's still completely shit and uncompetitive. Even with the super engine, you have to be really pushing, and I don't like how every time you touch the side of this wall, it sounds like bats squeaking. What's up with that? That's actually for every car, by the way, but I'm just gonna throw it in there. You can also be an Audi Quattro, old-ass Citroen, a huge school bus, an SL500, or hell, even a UFO. It's whatever you're feeling like today. There's also a nighttime cheat code turning all the stages into nighttime stages, but it's exclusive to PC and special edition versions, and in terms of modding, there are also a few things here. A track editor. You'll have to download Car Editor in order to add community-added custom vehicles, and there's also a performance editor. I can only promote you trying to install these things yourself, as I'm playing this on an emulator, of course. Upon finishing a stage, you'll be taken to this menu where you can replay the race likewise as to in the first game. There are many different camera settings. Too many in fact, and I haven't told you guys earlier, but during races you can enable different camera point of views by a press of a button. Like last time, the driver point of views displaying the cockpit kinda looks like it was just ripped off from a real life image and then put into the game, but I do really appreciate the attention to detail. Last up, I've mentioned to you guys how you can play as pedestrian vehicles with using cheat codes and passwords, but you haven't seen any of that footage throughout the video. What's up with that, huh? Okay, well, I'll tell you. So if we go back into the opponent setting, we can turn the traffic setting on if you're just challenging one single opponent. By doing so, you'll be racing each other through traffic like in the first game. This time, however, there are no police. Yeah, there's just no police, and the traffic around the track usually only starts appearing after a minute or so. And when comparing this game a lot to the Need for Speed 1, this game has the same amount of playable vehicles if we exclude, this. In the last game, there were 4 regular races and 3 broken down into, 3 sprint races connected to each other. So that would lead to a total of 13 different events, while this game still only has 7. Now, the PC release of this game is supposed to have a total of 12 players, which is more than the 8 there is in the last game, and still, if we want to keep comparing this to other games, for example Gran Turismo, I think it's quite a bit off. Gran Turismo did come out much later in 1997, but it included 11 courses, all reversible, but 2 of them, and a total of 180 cars even. I don't know if you count most of them as an entirely separate car, what's the difference between these 4 Supras? Literally nothing, only the name. And real quick, before we wrap things up, without messing around with too many of the options throughout the game setting, trying to gain access to certain settings are really strange and confusing to me. Earlier for the script I wrote about how I was unable to access these driving settings due to it being grayed out. Now, if this is grayed out for you, it's because the in-game setup, you must have the race style changed to simulation. Otherwise you'll not be able to customize it. Now I get it, but it was confusing at first, and likewise to the traffic setting. You can't enable the traffic option, but that's only on the Proving Ground course. It's fine on the other courses, and you must have it set to a 1v1. So yeah, it's a bit puzzling at first, and it's not really informative, but I kinda get it. And that's gonna be it, guys. So, feelings, opinions about the game. Well, I do actually like the gameplay much better than in the first Need for Speed. Like I said earlier, I think whenever I play Need for Speed 1, it's just kind of a gamble whether or not, I actually do something good and the controls kind of function to my liking, and yeah. In terms of music, I actually really like the music in this game. I think it's pretty sick. Especially the main menu music, that is actually really awesome and actual good music. So yeah, huge thumbs up. Graphics are okay. I mean, we're still in the 90s here, you can't expect that much, but I think it's actually better looking than in the first game. In the first game, there's literally several vehicles that look like they're made of, they look like they're made for the DS, they have 50 polys. And no offense, but I mean, we are a bit later, we are a few years later, I guess, in terms of Need for Speed games. And then also in terms of sound, I think the game is pretty decent. You know, it excels compared to the first game. A lot of the theme in this game is kind of that it excels better than in the first Need for Speed, and it's supposed to. It came out later. But, like, you know, you still have this a similar amount of content compared to the first Need for Speed. Like, you have the same amount of vehicles, you have, like, kind of the same amount of courses, not really, and then, like, in terms, you don't have cops. It doesn't bother me that it's a Need for Speed game that doesn't have cops whatsoever. It doesn't keep me awake at night, I swear. But no, that's a joke for real. It doesn't bother me, and it kind of doesn't help that like Gran Turismo like has its head poking around the corner, and then when that finally released, it was just kind of a bombshell on any racing game at the time. Now, in today's video, I did actually manage to get myself a physical copy of this game. It is the first 90s Need for Speed game that I played and own a physical copy of. So let's dive into the action! Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit came out March 25th, 1998 for PlayStation by EA Canada, and for a little while that was it. You could only get it on PlayStation, but then later that year in October the game saw itself another release for Windows made by EA Seattle. What does this half a year difference make to the game? Content. It's content. So I hereby announce that I'll be playing the PlayStation version before playing the PC version, and yeah, but let's take a look at the intro first. Epic, so we're here, this is the main menu, we have the game type, which we're skipping, I don't have a second controller. We can switch through race mode to single race, hot pursuit, tournament, knockout, and practice. Real quick to tell you about the other stuff, like in the last game you can switch between driving styles by choosing either arcade or simulation, and when you select simulation you can adjust the car's performance. It's more in depth than last time though, and a huge improvement. You can switch between which part you want to adjust, then once you've highlighted that part, adjust it with the slider. You can also choose between these two skill modes, and in options we have the settings you've come to expect. Right, so in single race and hot pursuit you get to choose between all these settings. You can pick any track to avail, adjust the lap counter, decide whether a race is reversed, mirrored, held at night, or whether or not you want there to be rain. We'll choose hometown as our map for now. Then we got our cars, we'll choose the 355 for now, and most of these settings are pretty self-explanatory, but anyway, I will show you the compare setting. It will take you to this menu. I think it's pretty neat. Showcases us being taken to a different menu, and we choose each car, then cycle through information about them. Then you can listen to the history about them, again being spoken by a narrator, and slideshow is yet again you being able to look at these wallpapers of these vehicles. And in settings, like I said earlier, you can manually adjust the performance to your liking. Moving forward once more, we can select how we want to face our opponents. In single race, you get to choose between one opponent, a full grid of 8 people, or no opponents at all. You can also choose if you want them to all drive random cars or one selected vehicle, and if you select it to a 1v1 you can again turn on the traffic setting. In Hot Pursuit it only limits you in a 1v1 or no one at all, but otherwise it's pretty much the same thing. Now, single race is basically what you can expect. You get no reward for doing this and it's just your bog standard race, but Hot Pursuit, this game's selling point is a return of there being police again. So you're doing the race and there will be cop cars. Now, anytime you crash or drive below 20, I think I have it set to kilometers in this instance, the police pull you over and you get fined. It's not as much of a drag as last time though. You can only get pulled over a total of 3 times though, and on the 3rd time you get arrested and DNF. Then in tournament you have similar settings available other than the track and lap counter. Like in any tournament, you earn points dependent on the place you finish in, and the tournament cycles through 8 other tracks. You have to make sure you're never lower in the top 3 in the standings though, otherwise you get eliminated and have to restart the whole thing again. You can, however, restart the race from the beginning without losing your entire progress of the tournament though. It's a drag to then restart and redo the entire 4 laps of each track again. Next up we have knockout. This time you can't adjust any setting, but at least we're only doing 2 laps per race this time. Like last time, finish anywhere above last place and you advance to the next race. And lastly we have practice mode. It's again just like a time trial mode. You can tamper with all these settings and adjust them to your liking. That's it. Anyway, let's talk about the tracks. I think they're all a huge improvement over the tracks from the last game. There are still obstacles on the tracks such as these lamp poles and these cacti that I feel like you should be able to drive through, such as in like a modern Need for Speed game, but we're still in the 90s and this is far better than getting stopped for no reason. The first event is Hometown. It's this quiet and peaceful place outdoors during fall with these houses. Then we enter a forest that leads into a town. We drive through the town and have to make this sharp turn that 90% of the time I don't take properly. And again, don't hit the lampposts. Seriously, what sick bastard thought this was a good idea? Anyway, we leave the town to complete the lap and we roll. It's a nice track. Next up we have Red Rock Ridge. It's this Grand Canyon type circuit. We start off at this observatory type place and pass this gas station. Then you have an alternative route here, but it doesn't really go anywhere. And then a little down the road we have this shortcut over here. We pass these 2 open valleys, enter a tunnel, and round up the lap. The track itself is okay, I think. I don't like it as much as the first one, but I like it better than some of the others. It's not really nice having a small lead and then hitting a cactus and then falling behind from first to last, even on the beginner difficulty, but okay then. We then have Atlantica. This metropolitan track has you going over a bridge, around this bend, and we can take a shortcut over this sewer passage. Then we need a break here so we can make it through the zigzag. Then we loop around the bend and scurry through this straightaway, make another turn, drive through someone's backyard and back ahead the tree. Let's carry on around this corner, let's pass the straight, go through this tunnel, be cautious through this turn, and complete the lap. But wait, there is actually a shortcut here that we can take, and this one is actually a huge time saver, although we then have to defend strategically against the AI. Then the 4th track is Rocky Pass, and this track sucks, I'm not gonna lie. So the start of this track is fine, you have your basic twists and turns for about a minute or so. Then we have this ramp you can take or not. We go through this tunnel, and you can take this alternative route if you take it correctly or not. This turn sucks, be sure to brake here. Then we enter this town, take another sharp corner, and that's the lap. It takes a few playthroughs to get the hang of this map, but overall, I mean, I guess it's okay. I'd rather play this over Nepal from the last game, but the distance of the track is still far too long. The next track we go to is Lost Canyons. The start of the track uses parts from Red Rock Ridge, but remember this blocked off path earlier? This time we're going there. The same matter goes for the remaining tracks of the game, but let's talk about this one first. So we navigate these corners and drive through this underground section and enter this temple? I don't even know. We're then back outside and the rest of the course looks like this until we get back to the track, and you should recognize this by now. We then finish a lap. We then go to Country Woods. This time we take a left here and the track becomes a winter wonderland. There's not much to say other than that there's a ton of sharp bends we have to mind our speed for. Then a little down the road we can loop around this bend as so, or we can take a cheeky little shortcut through these trees. I mean, this has to be faster, come on, it's there for a reason. Then we have a few more bends and we enter the track again where there previously would be a town. The track is again about 2.5 minutes long, and it's just long. Then we go to Aquatica. We drive from the start finish straight and take this immediate right turn followed by a tunnel. We're then driving alongside this ridge and we can take this shortcut into the tunnel here. We pass more zigzaggage, drive through this coral pattern tunnel, and holy shit, we're driving through a tunnel underwater. We exit, have a few more tight turns, then keep going and go through this tunnel, don't hit it cause shit sucks when you do, and we make it to familiar territory. Then lastly we have the summit. You guessed it, the first minute of the track is just rocky pass but with a winter palette until we pass this tunnel. The majority of the track stays as just being like a public road until we pass this skiing resort. We then pass a tunnel and drive by this lodge, I guess. And then we get back to the town we passed before, and it's another 3-minute race. Upon reaching the last event of the tourney or knockout championship, you get to race on Empire City. This is a track you have to unlock in the game, and it's themed around this crazy industrial area. Right off the bat there is a shortcut here, but it's up to you if you want to take it or not. I can describe to you what the track is like further, but it's not really much different from what you're seeing on the screen. Later in the course you drive what seems like a park, I guess, and up until this point the track was just sorta alright, but now it really just kinda went from meh to shit. And that's it, but before we start talking about the cars, there are actually a few courses we can unlock by putting in cheat codes. So let's take a look at them. We've got autocross and just like, what the fuck? It's basically the sand pit and there's ramps over the entire track like the ones you see here. Then there are alternative routes and then it just keeps going for 2.5 minutes and it's like a really underdeveloped course and like the world is tiny. Are we small? Look at these trees, bro. Hello? Hi! The trees are huge! The trees are huge! Next up we got Cavern. What you're looking at on the screen is basically this entire course. Then we got Scorpion 7. We're in an aquarium or whatever. It's actually not that awful of a course. I kinda got a heart attack when I saw the top time say 9 minutes in the corner, but the track is actually quite short. Then we got Space Race. I don't know where the idea really was. For a majority of the track we're inside the space station, I guess. Then we crash. Then we teleport into the room. Then we crash again and respawn outside of the room again to progress. Then we're, well, rallying in outer space. You can't tell me we're not doing that. Look at these ramps. And then we're back inside, and this part of the track is admittedly really cool looking. And then we finish the lap. What an event. And lastly, the room. I wasn't quite sure what this was gonna be upon reading the name, but it's actually just a kid's room. I mean, that's what I'm forced to believe. Why the fuck would you ever have these alphabet blocks if you weren't a kid? I'm not hating on the track though. We're driving on an RC track from what I can tell, but it just kinda sucks there's not much to it. There's also another track and it's in a incomplete state, so it's not available to play. But it is in the game files. Then next up I want to talk about the in-game vehicles. We've got the Ferrari F355, the car I picked up the game with pretty much. It's just sort of balanced in every imaginable way, though I think stats don't make that much of a difference in this game. We got the Lamborghini Diablo, another car I play a lot due to it just being really fast apparently. Then we got the Ferrari 550 Maranello, the Corvette C5, the Lamborghini Countach, the Jaguar XJR15, the Mercedes CLK GTR, the Nazca C2, and then this game's fictional fantasy car, the El Nino. Yeah, it's this game's bonkers car, I guess. And again we have some cheat codes that allow us to play as custom pedestrian vehicles. And those are the vehicles for the PlayStation version. But do you know why I initially wasn't gonna review the PC version? Well, content, that's why. So to start off, the PC base game includes an Aston Martin DB7. Where is that in the PlayStation base game? There's a Jaguar XK8, a Mercedes SL600, a Ital-designed Skegera, and you can play as police cars in pursuit mode. And unlock more by unlocking them. And that's not even including the free DLC they made in 1999. From its website, the link to download the DLC will be in the description, and you can play as a Ferrari 456M GT, a Jaguar XKR, a Spectre R42, and a Lister Storm. And these aren't even the regional releases included. The Australian release of the game includes a Ford Falcon GT and a HSV VT GTS. You know, just like that because they're Australian. And there's also the 1998 Indy 500 pace car Corvette, which you can unlock from a Walmart release. What? Luckily for me, there's a mod called the Modern Patch which includes all these regional cars into the game, and that's what I think was sort of overlooked. The way you're meant to install this is just by dragging it into the game file. That's it. And there probably is a limit, but from what I saw in a video, you can at least install like 20 plus vehicles and have a total of like 50 different cars you can drive as. Now, this is why the modding scene of this game probably dates back as early as 2000. Yeah, the modding scene for this game is actually as insane as Need for Speed Most Wanted's modding scene. The amount of vehicles submitted are almost on par, if not must have only recently been overtaken by Most Wanted 05's modding scene due to its highly active community. Custom textures for maps have been made by this guy for the past 4 years, and custom tracks might be starting to become a thing since there are the tools for it. But damn, do I really just love modding communities, like, in general. Could you guys have ever guessed this McLaren F1 was modded? Like, you know how there is a showcase section of the game and the guy talks to you about, like, information about any vehicle?
It elevates Grand Touring to a level never before achieved. It bears an impeccable pedigree and introduces exciting state-of-the-art technology.
Pursuing its goal of creating the ultimate road-going sports car, McLaren Cars spared no expense and drew upon its vast Formula One racing knowledge to create the spectacular McLaren F1.
Well, the mod maker of this McLaren included it, but it's the announcer from the previous game giving you the info about the car and specs and whatnot. It's really clever. And then of course there is the Unreal Engine 5 project that someone is working on. It looks absolutely insane and really hope it becomes a reality one day. So I think it's obvious why people would play the PC version over the console version. I mean, you have so many more possibilities on PC in terms of modding, etc. But there's still a vital key of information I haven't really talked about throughout this video, and that is the controls of the game. What is there to say about the PlayStation version? I like the feel of the car much better than on PC. They're absolutely not the same, and while it feels like here the car has some weight to it, and it feels like it's on the ground, it doesn't feel that way on PC. I started getting the hang of the controls, playing to the point where I feel comfortable making like a power slide like this. In the last game I questioned if I should or shouldn't, because usually you have to fight the car back, but here every car kinda handles naturally. Truth be told, I just don't feel as confident on my feet playing the PC version. It all feels like pretty loose and sluggish, but you're still like, the handling is like cuckoo crazy, but you still stick to the track somehow. I don't know how that makes any sense. But I'm not gonna shit all over the PC version either. The menu and UI I think is greatly improved upon compared to the console version. Everything feels better organized. The game looks great for its time, and with the possibility to mod your game and add your own custom cars and even change your car color, you know, that wasn't a thing in the last game. That's really awesome. There is once more like a cockpit point of view. You know, it's very nice. They might want to re-implement that into newer Need for Speed games again. I don't know why they haven't. And then there's also the Pursuit being revamped, which is really neat. And that's gonna be it. Now, I don't want to drag this video on further. I like the game a ton. I think it was a lot of fun. I think it's easily the better one of the 3 original Need for Speed games. I still have to play High Stakes and Porsche Unleashed. Well, I will do so, but from comparing these 3 games to one another, I like this one the best so far. Like the controls on PlayStation. love the possibilities with what you can do on PC. It's kind of ridiculous, and that's where I'm gonna leave it. What's up guys, my name is Anna, and welcome to Need for Speed 4. I'll be playing the European version of the game, Need for Speed Road Challenge. The title is different, however it's basically the same game, but under a different name. So that being said, let's get into it. Let's go. Need for Speed High Stakes came out in March 24th, 1999 for PlayStation and was developed by EA Canada, and then in April it released in Europe as Need for Speed Road Challenge. And the game was then released in June in Japan as Overdrive in 4 because whatever the fuck else is happening in Japan. So yeah, again, PlayStation was the only way to go in terms of gaming, but then June 18th, 1999. Windows release. Oh shit! Yeah, the PC release came out, so I'm again going to be talking about both games, PlayStation and PC, starting with PlayStation, and I'll be playing it off an emulator because it just looks nicer. It's going to come at the expense of worse gameplay though, because legit, there is a lot of differences, and playing the real deal is honestly so much better than playing it on emulation ever. But at the expense of gameplay, I can suffer with that. I think a lot of people can. So anyway, we're gonna get into it, and let's take a look at the intro. Alright, so we have our main menu here with typically 4 options available, those being 1 player, 2 player, game options and trophy room, and we'll be going into 1 player to then select which type of race mode we want to play. We have test drive, single race, hot pursuit, tournament and special events. Well, let's go to test drive because it's literally what you can expect. Pick any track or car as you please and get a free lap to practice each track. Now, usually I talk about the controls later, but I think it's befitting I talk about them here. Whilst I expected it to mimic more closely to Need for Speed 3's controls, yeah, no. These controls are completely different. What happened to this? I'd say the controls, the physics, etc. for Need for Speed 3 on PlayStation were difficult to understand at first, but still, you know, fun. Every car honestly feels more difficult to drive. Every car feels so heavy when decelerating and hard to steer. You really need to practice in order to get the hang of it. So, I don't know, maybe they were focusing on a more realistic approach, or maybe it's the physics model. Another thing I wanted to make note of is that you can turn off taking damage or not, meaning this game has a damage model. However, from what I can tell, it doesn't come into effect until we enter a tournament. Then we have single race. Here we choose how we'll face against the AI. Then we have our difficulty level, and here we get to choose our track. For now we only have Germany, France and Canada unlocked, and then we'll be at our garage. You must buy a car from a car dealership before you can enter this race. I mean, of course you do, duh, how could I forget? So then we select car dealer and we have 20k to spend on a vehicle. So for the first time in the franchise ever, there's a currency based career, sorta. It's either the Merc or the BMW, and then we'll be able to enter a race. This is your standard exhibition mode, but you can press square to choose which one of these settings you want to enable or not. The AI drive pretty decently, and collision with the AI seems to function fine. However, sometimes the physics kinda go shit. In Hot Pursuit, it's more or less the same options in terms of selecting which track and car you want, but you get to choose the AI opponent car like you do in any duel in this game. Now we're racing in Germany, and what you're hearing is the regular police from the intercom. This is what happens when you turn the local police on. This is a pretty sick feature, to be fair, and, well, one that was previously only a cheat code, but now used to full effect. Anyway, Hot Pursuit is still exactly what you can expect. Here, I'm challenging the AI to a 1v1 in a duel, and it's a race to finish, but there's cops. Like in any 1v1 duel in this game, you can either enable or disable traffic cars. Driving too slowly near a cop car will result in receiving a fine or getting arrested, and sometimes the collision with the AI really sucks balls. I mean, you see me crashing and then limping away here. I guess I still got fined even though there weren't really any cops near me, so yeah. But if we then go back into setup for the Hot Pursuit option and select solo, we can actually play as cop cars. So like previously, there will be a crook you have to chase after and arrest, but you can also request backup, a roadblock, or a spike belt. You'll have to bust down a total of 10 criminals whilst the timer is counting down in order to succeed the offense. Then we got tournament, where we have several different tourneys to challenge, but we have to work our way up in order to enter them. This concept, going as far back as 1999, is also really cool, to be honest, and a great reason to really keep playing this game. Like, there's an actual incentive to keep playing. Anyway, we entered the tournament, and when finishing the race we earn prize money depending on our finishing position. We then have to pay for any repairables we may have possibly gotten accidentally. And with any money left over, we can upgrade our car out of a possible 3 levels. Even though adding each level upgrade makes a minor difference, this upgrade stays on the car forever. You'll never have to repurchase it. It's not as if the upgrade only applies for this specific tournament only. This time around you can also just finish in 5th place, get like 2 points, whatever it is, and then carry on with the tourney without the game forcing you to restart from the beginning again if you slip down lower than 3rd. Then lastly we have special events. There's only 2 available at the start of the game, but by beating the tourneys you'll unlock more of these special events. What makes them special? It's just that certain gimmicks come out to play. So you get it right, purchase cars you need in order to enter tourneys, and then you can earn more money by doing the special events. Okay, cool. Then the high stakes game mode. High stakes is a standalone split screen game mode requiring the insertion of a second player's memory card, and the winner gets the other player's staked car transferred to their saved game. In the PC release it's just an event throughout the career though, and yeah, I don't have a second person to play this with, but it's just again like a duel. So now onto the tracks themselves. You'll unlock them by beating each tournament they're featured in. We're gonna kinda breeze through these. We have Landstrasse, Germany. Genuinely pleasant track. The only parts you kinda have to pay attention at is through this market area. I use this crack in the wall for reference on where to brake. The rest of the track is cool though. It just sucks that all these tracks are pretty long, but it's just what it was in the 1990s. Then we have Route Addon in France. The town section you have to be cautious of at high speeds, but then later in the course you're rewarded by some beautiful cherry blossom trees. In France, of course. There's Candiac Park in Canada. I actually really like this track. It's not ridiculously complicated and I can just switch my brain off while racing at this track. And it's got a train. I love how the wheels of a train are just a solid texture, but yeah, it's cool. I like it. I like trains. We got Durham Road in England. The entire course is just a motorway, and what you're seeing on the screen is basically the whole course. It's a nice and simplistic track though. Then we have Celtic Ruins in Scotland. You can obtain high speeds and yeah, anyway, yeah, the track is okay, I like it. Then we have Dolphin Cove in the USA. We start off at a pier and then we make our way up the coast into like a rocky waterfall section, and yeah, the track is a big, nice, good for me, yeah. And then we have Snowy Ridge in the USA. Yeah, I don't know what to even say about this track. It's your Nepal or Snow Summit from the previous 2 games. It's not quite 3 minutes long, but my god. Bro, playing on this course with the McLaren GTR is gonna make you hate life. It's too fast, so I just stick to the 911 instead. And then we have 3 different types of raceway stages. The first one being in Italy. I don't know how I really feel about this track. You'd think the cars would at least all line up together on the start-finish straight, like in an actual Grand Prix event, but no. The track is basically, again, most of what you're already looking at, and overtaking is tough. There's a banking section on the track at some point, which is awkward as hell, and that's about it. Alright, next up is the Raceway in the USA, and this track I think has much better track pacing. The overall flow is just so much better for the player to handle. And then the last raceway in Spain, and it's a raceway alright, easily combines the worst elements from Italy, and then we have this underground tunnel we race through halfway through the course.
That's not very raceway-esque.
Yeah, it's okay I guess, could be worse.
Anyway, now the cars we can play as.
There's the Mercedes SLK 230 and the BMW Z3 Roadster. Your dad might have bought one of these in 1999. Then there's the 1999 Chevy Camaro and the Pontiac Firebird. Then we have a BMW M5, an Aston Martin DB7, a Corvette C5, a Jaguar XKR, a Ferrari 550 and F50, and then a Lamborghini Diablo, a McLaren F1 GTR, a CLK GTR, a 911 Turbo, and a what the fuck. So yeah, we have two fictional supercars, this Phantom thing, and a Hot Wheels car, cause that's what it is. Then there's the Australian release of the game, which includes these two again, because of course we need special releases inaccessible to the rest of the world. And then there's an R34 in the Japanese release. Lucky Japanese bastards, I swear to god. You unlock these endurance versions of these cars by beating the Pro Cup, and there is also the various cop cars you can play as. It's cool how each livery represents which police are from their native country. Also there's a Chevy Caprice, which is this thing, take a good long hard look at it, and of course the helicopter.
But of course, I can't be oblivious to the cars the PC people got that we didn't get on console. So you know, it'd be stupid of me to completely ignore that. So we're talking about it.
Alright, time to boot up High Stakes on my computer. I already got everything set up earlier, and wait, what the fuck?
It's fucking horseshit. It's bullshit.
Files are corrupted, please reinstall.
Do I have to play it on this ancient dog instead?
Luckily, there's a mod that runs the game on modern PCs called the Modern Patch, which you download off this website. Extract the files and just drag them into the game files. Easy peasy. There's also a couple of other mods I'm going to install first. There's a modern aspect ratio patch that makes the game look nice in its native resolution. You can also change it to widescreen if it tickles your fantasy, and now we're all ready to go. Where was I? Right, so, cars. The PC release got a La Nina, which I guess is this is the El Nino's little sister or something, and oh, you thought that wasn't enough? It got 6 DLC cars. Yes, now arguably 2 of them should already be in the damn game, but the others are a nice inclusion.
Oh no, where am I gonna get these?
Thanks for asking, me. So on the same website where we installed the widescreen mod, we can also download all the DLC as well as the regional released vehicles.
Suck on that, regions! And whilst we happen to be on this subject, of course I decided to include more car mods, so roll it.
Starting off with another McLaren F1 mod. I mean, this is the base game McLaren, and now this is the same McLaren modded into the game. Nah, it's a day and night difference. I also included a 1984 Porsche 911, which was posted as far back as in 2002, and it still works. And then I also downloaded this Vision SLR and some other mods. It even has a track editor, and people are starting to convert courses from other older games into this one.
Be sure to check all of this stuff out in the description below, and now we're going to be back to just playing the PC version. With the mods, of course.
So we have our main menu here, of course. We have career, single, and multiplayer split screen. It has online, and people are still playing this against each other till this day. And then load is that you can just look at your replays here. Now, rather than a separate tournament and special event mode, both are combined, and here in Showcase is also where you can then buy your vehicles. And for the first time ever, we can actually fully look around into the interior of the car. Under single player arcade, there is a separate tournament mode available, which is just an alternative way to unlock bonus cars, awarded according to the set difficulty. Or you can either pick a single race, hot pursuit, or knockout race. And then finally high stakes races. They're pink slip races. You win, you take the other person's car, and vice versa. The knockout races are what you can expect again. The person in last gets eliminated every race. Hot Pursuit isn't really any different, and here I'll talk about the gameplay on PC. Again, like the Need for Speed 3, every car seems to have a lot of handling. I mean, just look, you seem to be able to do this. Then this game features a damage model, and you can see here the amount of damage taken during the race. Then repair it. You get it. And one more thing, all the tracks from the previous game returned, which gives us the most possible playable courses ever in a Need for Speed game. And it's great to see them back. That being said though, let's talk. I think objectively High Stakes on PC is a better game than the PlayStation version and both Need for Speed 3 games as a whole. It's just a better package, and like, people are still playing it online even when they have no reason to. However, again, I just like the overall feel on console much better, both on emulation and especially the real thing. This just doesn't do it for me, honestly. It's completely preference, but let me put it this way. I enjoy both games even though I'd rather pick the console version. And High Stakes, well, I don't know, I feel like it's just Need for Speed 3 but built upon further and then re-released under a different name, so I don't know, that kind of feels like, you know, EA holding people at gunpoint again and making them go through brutal development, etc. But it's really just an opinion and nothing else.
Alright, so that was Need for Speed High Stakes. So, thoughts, feelings, verdict. Well, I do like the game. I did enjoy it. At first I was just kind of like, what is happening? Later I kind of grew more attached to it over time, but I still think it's kind of just, oh, we have Need for Speed 3, why don't we just use that again and then just build a bit on top of that, you know? Which, I mean, okay, it's the 90s, I kind of get it, but at the same time, it's just kind of really obvious in this game. I'm probably not that late by the time this comes out, but anyway, let's talk about the time Need for Speed dedicated an entire game to only Porsches.
Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed came out in March 29th, 2000 for both PC and PlayStation in North America, developed both by EA Canada and Addon Games.
Wait, what happened to EA Seattle?
Well, I guess they were working on other stuff behind the scenes.
Oh, I don't get it.
But anyway, we had Addon Games work behind the PlayStation version, and they are primarily responsible for making... Oh. Meanwhile in Europe, where it was called Need for Speed Porsche 2000, both releases of the game came out a bit later, with Japan not getting it at all.
I'll be playing the PlayStation release first, because it cost me a fortune, let alone trying to find a copy of the game. But so we have Porsche Challenge, a 1997 PlayStation 1 game that takes the concepts of racing Porsches and doing various amounts of challenges. And we have the Japanese Need for Speed 1, which takes the Need for Speed 1 game and turns it into a Nissan-only exclusive game. So you have the Need for Speed 1 with only Nissans, and then there's this game. So I'm curious to see how this game manages to one-up those concepts. Without further ado, let's watch the intro.
So we have our main menu here with these 6 options available: Evolution, Quick Races, Factory Driver, Video Showcase, Options, and Credits. I'll be going to Quick Races first. Here we can either pick between a race, time battle, chase, or capture the flag. Well, let's just head into race first. It takes us to this screen where we can choose any car to our liking, and although I don't particularly care too much, why the fuck isn't orange a color to choose? Anyway, we can go to Germany, France, Scotland, Japan, or America. And here, you can in fact see me playing it from the screen. This is fine. The controls feel fine as far as I'm concerned. Takes a little bit of practice to get the hang of things, however, it overall feels pretty decent. One thing you do have to be mindful of is oversteering, which can be a bitch at times. Like in the last game, there's a damage model, and this time it's more obvious whenever your car needs it or not. In your garage, you can usually fix and pay for any repairs, but obviously this means you gotta be careful you don't blow all your money in the early career. Time battle. Both drivers have a set amount of time to their name, and players have to set a lap time faster than their opponent does. Once you set a lap time, if the opponent fails to set a time in the remaining time that player has left, they'll be eliminated. Now to the introduction of Chase. For the first time ever, we have some type of free roaming mode where we can explore the small portion of any country. You see, we may not have many places of the world we can visit in this game, however, it's a whole entire map that you can race certain portions on. And yes, in Chase, it's a small portion of any map. Anyway, in Chase, you're evading a cop car for a set amount of time. I think it's a cool new addition, but it's definitely not perfect. You can't let the cop touch you once or you just die. And even just the slightest touch gets you arrested. And then we have Capture the Flag, and it is indeed Capture the Flag. Once again, we have access to some portion of a map, and the AI player always knows where it is unless you know in advance. So I can't suggest you play this by yourself unless you're playing it with a friend. Alright then, we have Factory Driver. In this mode you get to be a junior test driver for Porsche, and we have to do a variety of challenges. Later on as you progress, you'll gain promotions and gain licenses and eventually upgrade from a junior test driver to a senior test driver. There isn't like a difficulty setting within playing these events, but they dial the difficulty up at like 100 from the first event onwards. Like Christ, these challenges demand perfection. There is no margin for error, and if the car sometimes just can't keep up with the inputs you're pressing, then that sucks for you. What makes this 100 times worse is the lack of a restart button. Throughout the entire game there's a lack of a restart button. Your only real options are to either finish the event after you've already filled 3 seconds into the event. Then on this screen you can retry, or you can abort the mission, wait for it to load, look at the screen again, accept, load back into the event. Was there something wrong with just the idea of having a restart button? While these events honestly aren't all that challenging, the lack of a restart button really makes it a more infuriating process. But yeah, if you thought it'd be something other than avoid hitting the cones and beat the record lap time, then I'm sorry, you're out of luck. The mission types range between slalom, delivery, and time trial. When you obtain a license, you'll be rewarded with a vehicle unlock, and it's on to the next set of events.
Well, Jesus, that almost gave me a brain aneurysm, so how about we talk about something more relaxing?
If we go to Video Showcase, you can rewatch the in-game cutscenes, and there's even a movie trailer. This is promotional material to the movie Gone in 60 Seconds, as being a part of some partnership. It features Nicolas Cage and Angelina Jolie. Oh, it was a 2-hour movie with very mixed reviews. Okay. Don't you just love it when movie trailers go out of their way to make the trailer so condensed you can't even follow what the fuck is happening? You see this part at the end? I had to rewatch the trailer 5 times in order to try and understand what it was about. Anyway, let's get away from whatever the hell that was. The last game mode for us to try out here is Evolution. Yup, these are Skittles on wheels. So Evolution mode works as the following. There are 3 different eras, a classic era, a golden era, and a modern era. In order to progress to the next era, you'll have to win the tournament. The cars will also be divided into 3 different performance classes. Class 3 being the slowest, Class 2 being average, and Class 1 being the fastest. And you'll have to buy a car from each different class in order to enter each individual tourney. Yes, that's right, you have to buy them. Once again, there's a currency-based career mode. You'll have to make sure you manage your money precisely, however, even here there are slight issues that bother me. It's the separation between coupe versions and cabriolet versions of vehicles being sold. The loading time between loading each individual vehicle already kinda takes some time, but for it to load the exact same vehicle but with a slightly altered version? Why couldn't the circle button be mapped to show off the cabriolet version of each vehicle, rather than it causing the car roster to become more clogged up and confusing than it already is? The car roster is formatted to display the car in order of performance, not by year or by class, and there are 74 of them. The car total is 74, yeah, I counted them. But yeah, anyway, whatever, moving on. We also have weekend races and circuit races. You'll need the required car to enter these events, and beating them is just for additional in-game completion. Then let's enter a tourney. Here we either qualify or race. Car setup allows us to tune the car to our liking, and car repair allows us to repair any damages taken during a race. You can enter the qualifying event if you want to start the race on pole, but usually I skip over it because yeah. Once you beat the tourney, you move on to the next era, but you don't seem to ever be able to go back to the previous era once you move on to the next one. Next I'll talk about the cars, and wow, there's a lot of fucking cars in the game. Like I said earlier, they're divided into 3 classes throughout 3 different eras. Well, here you go. Yeah, no way am I possibly covering all of these, so I thought it'd be better to just show them on the screen. There are a few odd inclusions, and they're really neat to see into action here. And I guess to talk a bit more about the places we visit, let's start off with Germany. It's this snowy environment, and there are a lot of elevation changes, and later on we have this town and like a castle town type of area. The map is alright. Then we have France. We're in this Riviera next to the sea, and we drive through this town and wait, what? Are we still doing this? What sick bastard thought this was still needed to be a solid texture and not something you can smash through? Anyway, France is fine, I guess, just like the country in real life. Then we have Scotland. Yeah, it's Scotland alright. Majority of the course we're just driving in the Highlands until we pass this generically Scottish town. It also has an harbour, and yeah, it's actually a pretty cool location. Then we have the USA. Most of the track is just this canyon section you drive through, but there's also a town, and yeah, it's all just a bit okay, nothing groundbreaking. And then we have Japan. Well, Japan is pretty cool to look at, I guess. I mean, want me to make a painfully obvious statement like this is a cat? Japan has it all. The huge city towers, the nice outdoors, the industrial part. Yeah, Japan, it's Japan, and it's fine, and this is fine. And then we have 3 different raceway stages. I won't be covering them because they all kind of look alike. They're all basically what you're seeing on the screen. However, I think it's a neat inclusion into the game, and yeah, I think they're alright. They're cool. The tracks are pretty decent, but another unfortunate gripe I have would be each location has 4 different track layouts, of which only 1 you can play in the quick race mode. The others you'll always have to play in evolution mode. Some people aren't willing to play through a whole entire era of evolution mode in order to play one specific track, so like, why? What was wrong with a system like this? And likewise with the chase mode, why limit the player to a small portion of the map? What was the problem with not allowing free roaming across the entire map? I get that the PlayStation 1 has its limitations still, but okay, like, this is driver on PlayStation. You have the whole entire map to drive around on, and this is one of 4 maps. I don't know, I'm just exposing what potential the game could have had. Likewise to the playable vehicles, it finally took us 3 years after Gran Turismo came out to finally choose more than the average of 10 to 15 vehicles per Need for Speed game. Overall, I might sound a bit negative about the entire game, but I actually had a really decent experience playing it, and I like the content the game still provides us to this day. And yeah, that being said, let's take a look at the PC version. Hey! So yeah, my old PC. You might be wondering many things. Listen, this game has had many different problems running on my actual PC. A Microsoft error, crashing on the main menu, not running the installation at all!
Holy shit!
I was considering giving up, being pathetic like a loser, and delay the video even further, and I don't know, I guess having to rely on someone else's footage, and then, well, yeah, my old PC had no problems whatsoever. Hey, if you ever ask yourself, what did Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed and Tomb Raiders have in common, then the answer is, they are very hard to get the upper hand on. Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed on the PC. Then starting up the game asks us which profile we want to load, and then we are greeted by this menu. Now to quickly run by some of the simple modes. Single player is the quick race mode. Here we can either do a quick race, quick knockout, or knockout. Quick knockout is the player last to finish their lap gets eliminated and you only play on circuit tracks, and just knockout is the player finishing the race in last gets eliminated after each race. Alright, well let's enter quick race. Here we can choose which car we want and we can interact with such said car. Pretty cool. Location, only 8 different tracks. I suppose you'll have to unlock the other tracks. Here we go, this game gets it right, we have an orange location setup. So here you decide whether or not you want to do the race forward, backwards, or mirrored. And there's a traffic option, but still no time of day or weather option. Alright, let's go. And yeah, out of all the Need for Speed games I've played on PC so far, this one plays the least awful actually. I like the HUD, once again there's a damage model, and Monte Carlo is actually pretty recognizable like in modern F1. Next up, Porsche Chronicles. Though it sounds like a really awesome bonus mode, it's actually just kinda like a photo album that shows you when certain Porsches came out. Multiplayer is a mode you can still play online against other players using IP Lounge. Load game is, well, what do you expect? And then again, Factory Driver is again the player challenged to do these tests. Make it somewhere in time. Do the slalom, don't hit the cones. I consider these events to have much less of a difficulty compared to the console version. There you have to be flat out perfect. Your biggest concern here sometimes is just not knowing how to go about the event, but if you ever mess up the event, any in-game character will always ever judge you on every move. Here we have Frank. He tells us, "Hey, in all my time working here, Stephanie's always had the top time on this event, but she thinks it can be beaten, but I don't think it can. Prove me wrong, blah blah blah." And if you then fill the event, okay, well, fuck you, asshole. Lastly then, Evolution mode. Once again, it's a currency-based career mode, and you'll have to manage your money accordingly. In the garage, we can purchase and select between cars. Repairing your car works similarly, but now there are more contributing factors. Car setup is, well, preference, and parts is where you can buy upgrades for your car and apply them. I wish every car upgrade you bought was segmented separately, like in the latter half of the upgrade menu, but it looks good enough, I suppose. I'm not sure which one is the better upgrade out of the two most of the time. Then the paint shop actually isn't that bare bones. You can change the color of the interior, add a race number, and even add decals and change the color of those. Once the car we bought is eligible to enter a race, we do exactly that. Spend money to make money. There's a total of 15 different courses, all completely different to the console version. There's the Alps, an Autobahn, the Auvergne, the Corsica, Côte d'Azur, Normandy, Pyrenees, Schwarzwald, and Zone Industrielle. The tracks are fine, all of these are like point-to-point sprint races. Some events aren't friendly towards some cars, but that's up to you to figure out with the car tuning. There's also like 5 different Monte Carlo Grand Prix, and they're the circuit races of this game. The cars are once again categorized in 3 different eras by 3 different classes per era. So yeah, there's a lot of cars. I still think there are far too many cars that don't really make a difference to the roster, but okay, I suppose, like, a lot of history is attached to them, probably. There's also a few DLC cars, a 911 GT2 and GT3, and then a 928 GTS and a Porsche 959. You'd be surprised that isn't actually included into the base game. It's one of the most revolutionizing cars of the 80s, and it was included in the console version. I'm kinda bitter this isn't in the game, but okay, I mean, I have more than enough cars to choose from. To my counting, there's a total of 84 playable vehicles, which is, yeah, Plenty.
Which is way more than I could possibly ever ask for. So what if I wanted more? And different ones? Not only Porsches.
Always gotta include a little bit of modding in these videos. Well, for starters, I've been playing the game running this game's modern patch. Get it from this website, it allows the game to run on a modern PC. Not saying this is exactly modern, but you catch my drift. There are again plenty of different car mods uploaded to Need for Speed Cars, because in an all Porsche exclusive game, why wouldn't you want to play as an Audi? Need for Speed Porsche Unleashed also has further obscurities like a Texaco partnership. During its time, these diecast cars would all come with a separate demo disc, and each individual disc would allow you to play with the car on the cover. Now, it is ultimately still a demo, so you get one car and a different track per CD each time, but there isn't like music or really anything else. You'd mainly collect these as like obscure Need for Speed collector's items. I highly recommend you check LGR's video down below, and yeah, he covers everything about them.
Well, I guess my opinion on the game as it stands.
So the PlayStation version. I enjoy this better. You have Evolution, which is like your career mode similar to in High Stakes, and though the game can be finicky at times, I actually really had a good time. I have some small issues with the game which I covered earlier, but I mean, come on, every person has different takes on everything. And then the PC version. While most of my experience playing this feels kinda soured by being unable to even install it and play it, well yeah, I like this game too. I like the in-depth tuning. You can still kinda tell the games are evolutions of each previous game, like how they're built upon each other, but they also did come out within a year of each other, and the experience you get is still pretty decent. I like the music, and when I did have a few glitches, they were only minor.
Retrospect? Yeah, nah, I'll probably, if I do want to play any of these games anytime soon, I will probably play the PlayStation version because of my situation. I'm not gonna drag this PC up anytime soon, unless I have to do it for, yeah, I guess some kind of video. But yeah, likely in my free time, I will be playing the PlayStation version just for convenience sake. And I'll definitely not be looking at the Game Boy version anytime soon. Merry Christmas, everyone. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 is actually a game I have very little experience playing prior to making this video. I got it together with my PlayStation 2 last year, and ever since then I touched it maybe only a few times actually. But that's about to change. I'm about to look at this entire game, and yeah, strap yourself in. Cause the fucking the Need for Speed sleigh is going, so yeah.
Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 2 came out October 2nd, 2002 in North America for a whole new generation of consoles. It came out for the PlayStation 2, for the first time on Xbox, and for the first time on a Nintendo console. The PlayStation 2 version was developed by Black Box, with the GameCube and Xbox release coming out the same day, both being developed by EA Seattle. They're back at it once more, and then October 25th, the PC release came out, also developed by EA Seattle, and it's basically the same version as the console games they made. Europe got the games later as per usual, and I'll look at the console release first. Alright, so this is our main menu, and yeah, this is the menu. We have Hot Pursuit, World Racing, and Options. Well, let's go to World Racing first, and here we have 3 different game modes. Quick Race, Challenge, and Championship. Well, it's been a while since I've played the game, so Quick Race it is. And straight into the action we go, no custom settings or anything. Further on that soon. It's been a while, but this actually still feels pretty good. Like any game, you have to get used to the overall feel and handling, but yeah, this is nice. Right off the bat, the graphics are also a huge improvement, but that's given due to the next gen console change. The car models look so much better and every course is very pleasant to look at. Alright, well, let's go into challenge. So this is where you have access to all the settings. The player setting is here in case you add a second controller. Skill level is, well, you get the drill, and here in setup we can adjust the race settings to our liking. Single race is basically what we were just doing. Knockout is again per race, the player finishing the race in last place gets eliminated, and in lap knockout a player is eliminated every lap, as you can see. Then if we proceed, we can choose whichever car we want to drive, and then here we can choose which tracks we want to play. And here you see lap knockout into action. And then we have championship. What we have here are individual events that sometimes consist of one or several different races, usually with a different gimmick each time. They're divided into an event tree or event potato, I guess. Here you unlock all kinds of cars and courses, and the challenges become more and more demanding the further you progress. The events range between what I said earlier, sometimes a singular race or multiple bunched into one event. Or it can be basically a time trial event, or for example this V12 challenge race with the cars exclusive to participate.
Well, that was World Racing for you. We're gonna dive into Hot Pursuit mode next.
Right, next up, Hot Pursuit, and here we have 4 different race modes. Quick Race, You're the Cop, Challenge, and Ultimate Racer. So I'll also be going into this Quick Race mode. Like before, we head straight into the action. The gameplay doesn't change much other than now we're entering the police stuff territory. The bar at the top activates whenever there's a cop nearby. The X's at the top turn red whenever you get busted. On the third strike you get arrested and DNF. The stars on the screen basically indicate the activity of heat you have, which you gain from collecting Need for Speed points. You earn points during the race by either gaining air, reaching a certain speed, running roadblocks, etc. By pressing the left trigger, the game will rotate the camera around our vehicle, and by pressing the right one, the game shows us hypervision by showing us what's up ahead. This will become a key element as we progress through the game. Well, let's head into You're the Cop. You choose a cop car and, well, it's off we go. What exactly am I meant to do here? Now, I don't recall the game ever telling you exactly what you're meant to do, and so recording this part for my review, I got stuck, so I started pressing random buttons, and oh! Okay, so you're meant to activate your cop sirens first, and then you can begin taking them down. Oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah, as you can see, pressing R3 activates NOS, that's just what it is. Pressing left trigger calls in a helicopter, and then pressing right trigger calls in a spike strip. Then to take them down, you just continue to ram them. Challenge mode is quick race, just as last time. We can choose a car and track and then dive into the action, and then Ultimate Racer, yeah, it's our potato plant from earlier again. This is likely where you'll be spending your time for the majority of the game. Have the recent Need for Speed games lacked challenge or incentive to give your all because of a ridiculously low difficulty? No, then buckle the fuck up, because this game gives you no mercy. The challenges remain somewhat the same. Do the single race, beat the event before the time runs out, do the knockout tourney while there's cops. Okay, but so you'll enter an event, be on your merry way, you know, and then there will be a cop. And then there will be chaos. And then there's gonna be more cops, and then there will be a helicopter. So make sure you never forget about this helicopter, because it just straight up drops exploding barrels onto the track. There will be multiple different roadblocks, just a regular one and a spike strip. Now the spike strip one I often have a difficult time evading, so this is where the zone camera comes into handy. So yeah, I recommend you absolutely use these when you see a roadblock on the map. Just as a reminder, you can get busted twice and it will reset the wanted level. Next, the courses. So first thing to mention is that several maps displayed on the track selector screen are interconnected to one another, like in the first Hot Pursuit game. So here for example we have Ancient Ruins, where we pass this bridge and then take a right. Now in Calypso Coast we take a left instead. And then there's a point-to-point event that's pretty much just a drive around the entire map. So yeah, Ancient Ruins. This is the first track I wanted to cover because of how simplistic it is. Anyway, 20 seconds into the event you see the structure here. Don't do what I did. A little later down the road, we pass a few structures and scoot through the corners. I pass straight through these little zigzags, and then towards the end of the course we have this little town and we take the shortcut across the bridge here. Just around the corner is the start-finish straight, then Calypso Coast. We drive around this coliseum and cross this bridge. Then we can take this shortcut, however in the later stages of the game your car might be too fast to take it efficiently. Then later we drive over and then beneath this huge fire duct that takes us to the town we passed in the last event. This time we take a left and then up ahead the road there is actually a second town. We take the shortcut, pass by the shipyard, and then that's a lap done. And then Mediterranean Paradise is basically the point-to-point of the last two events, but put together into one massive sprint. I'll talk about this one the most just to get you up to speed on how this works. During this event, we get a pretty good idea on where exactly we drive at what point of the map, and you can see how it all connects with one another. In this case, we're in Greece, and occasionally we pass the Greek ruins. Then we have the parklands, starting off with coastal parklands. This is like your typical introduction to the game course, and then later on ahead we have a split path. I'd say in most instances it's worth going to the right side. Then down the road there will be a tunnel, and then a little after the tunnel there is an ongoing forest fire. But if we go back before we entered the tunnel, there's a whole entire section we can just skip. After we leave the Amazon we stick to the freeway, and there you have it, that's a lap. Then next we go to National Forest. Starting off, we can take a shortcut to the right here that will eventually lead us to this bumpy road. We go around the corner, past the straight, make another turn, and it's into the Amazon we go again. This should look familiar to you guys, but instead we take a left here, and after exiting the tunnel, that's basically... yeah, that's it, that's the track. Then Scenic Drive is this place's point-to-point event, and it's actually not that ridiculously big. Then we go to Alpine, starting off with Fall Winds. We start off relatively simple with up ahead a few country cabins, and then later on there will be a shortcut here to the right. And it goes on forever. Oh, there we go. I don't feel like an idiot for doing that. But then a little later up ahead, yeah, there will be yet another alternative path. It leads us into this active mine, and then, yeah, we're out of here. Then we drive onto this massive fire duct, and after that, yeah, the course has nothing exciting going on for it anymore. We make it past the finish line, and jeez, look at that lap time. Then let's go to Alpine Trail. Okay, let's start this puppy and not follow the other cars. Be sure to cross onto the other side cautiously rather than dying. Then after a bit of sightseeing, we can just cut across this part of the map until we're back on the road. Then we follow the road until we come across another alternative route. Make sure you always take this one. Then a little down the road, we have a Stonehenge over here, and after a bit more zigzaggage, we make it to the start-finish line. Then Autumn Crossing is just... ugh! What am I looking at? I'll cover a brief portion of this map. This map is a nightmare. Then we go to the desert and enter this track called Outback, and this course is a lot for us to take in. We appear to be at some Air Force, and then, if we stick to the right side, there's a cheeky shortcut for us here, and we can combine this shortcut by taking another shortcut, and... isn't life wonderful? Then we enter a tunnel where we can take another shortcut, and yeah, then we make it to the Outback section, and I just straight up cut across this anytime I can. We make it around this bend where a sandstorm is happening, and yeah, just take this alternative route right here, and then the rest of the track is pretty simple. But you can also enter the aircraft hangar if you so desire. Then we go to Desert Heat. At the start of this event, there will be a split path, and I just always take the right side. Now, the cacti you can hit, but the trees are still a big no-no. Anyway, this should look familiar, except now we take a left here, and then just go with the flow. I find this part tricky. You can take another shortcut here, which is pretty difficult to see, and then after we take the turn, we can just take another cheeky shortcut here. Then we have a waterfall, and that's the lap. Then Rocky Canyon essentially is this place's grand tour of the entire desert. Yeah. Then lastly, the tropics. Starting off, we have the island outskirts. This course is a 4-lane freeway for about most of the track, and I think it all looks really pleasant even if it reminds me a bit of Outrun. This track has a ton of elevation changes, and then a bit up ahead there will be this small village we storm through. Then we pass what seem to be a few very expensive buildings, but if we go back to that bridge we could cross it and it will take us past this beach. Then we pass this beach resort and we're back at the bridge where the race started. And if we go back a little and stay on the outside of this turn, it will take us to this beach where a movie set is happening. Don't hit the trees. What sick bastard. And then we have Palm City Island. Starting off, the city branches into two paths, and I'd say make sure you always brake here so you can take this path. It does lead us into another potential shortcut, but I don't like taking this one, to be honest. Then just up ahead there will be this village, and there will be these plenty of little inwards roads. Make sure you take them. And then it's just us scaling the mountain up and down until we get back to the city, and you'll realize that was all just one lap. And then Tropical Circuit is basically an entire tour of the island. I do think it's pretty cool how the city part connects to the neighborhood part. One other thing to mention is that all tracks have a second version, but this is just a reversed layout of a track. And then for the cars. While I won't be covering all of them, I think a lot of these are very awesome inclusions, and it's great there's a ton of new added cars put into the game, you know? Given the last game only had Porsches and then Need for Speed High Stakes roster was mostly an evolution of Need for Speed 3's roster. Speaking on that, this game's car roster is admittedly again more of an evolution of High Stakes roster, I guess. See what I mean? Speaking about the vehicles, the Ford Falcon and the Holden Monero or GTS Coupe are no longer exclusive vehicle releases. I'd like to say because of the new generation of consoles, they wanted to show off what these cars looked like at much better graphics, you know? Like, one last time how they always had it envisioned. And then some of my favorite cars in-game are the likes of the Murcielago and the Porsche Carrera GT, which happen to be in its concept stages, I guess. The last concept car thrown into a Need for Speed game for a while, and then there will be these side challenges you can do in order to unlock, like, what is this, like a tuned version, I guess? Every vehicle has an alternative version with most of the time some wacky livery, but this makes me ask the question, why not just bring the livery editor from Porsche Unleashed back? That did the job. But okay, I guess they may have not had enough time to do that or something.
And, hi! Let's, look at the PC version next.
So, I've got a story for you. As per usual, I installed the game how you're supposed to, only for it to just fail launching the game. Now, out of all ways I had to solve this problem, the one that worked for me was getting a different launch.exe file. What the fuck? I managed to at least open the game and play a race on the occasion the game doesn't close itself for no reason. Anyway, this main menu here is much more straight to the point. We have Quick Race, Multiplayer, Single Challenge, Championship, and Hot Pursuit. Well, let's go to Quick Race. It again takes us straight into a random event in a random setting. Multiplayer takes us to this menu. You can expect there are still groups of people playing this to this day. Single challenges again where you can select the rules and the such and whatnot. You choose which track and then your car, and yeah, this is the game. Other than the graphics being much more appealing, that's the only thing this game really has going on that's different for it. If we go to Hot Pursuit, we again have this upside down potato tree with events scattered out, but it's in a much more organized pattern this time. Championship is the exact same, and in case you couldn't tell the difference between Hot Pursuit and Championship, one's with cops, the other without any. The tracks are all the same, the vehicles are all the same. Usually the PC edition would be getting extra features that allow us to choose whichever car color we want, but that's also absent here, and in terms of modding, well, as far as I'm aware, with various widescreen mods in mind, this is really it. You have people uploading their custom car and it has to replace one in-game. I'm sure the background process is a bit different, but that's really it. There's no adding extra cars like there is in these two games. You can really only replace car mods with one of the pre-existing cars in the game. And other than that, I honestly don't know if I have any further comments about both these games. This was the first time we had EA licensed music from other artists in a Need for Speed game. The music genres range between techno and rock. I'd say the rock tunes go really hard, but they do get repetitive if you've played the game all day, and then techno is, well, There's other things I also quickly want to address. AI rubber banding is very obviously represented in this game. You can find yourself in the lead with an AI making a mistake behind you, but they'll just catch up somehow the next lap, even if you've been driving fantastically, and yeah.
Alright then, thoughts, feelings, emotions, yeah, I had an enjoyable time playing this game. I did mention in the start of this video that I had prior experience of playing this game before making this video, and I think I only played it for about 4 to 5 hours because after then I have already seen all of it, kind of, basically. But taking a deeper dive into the game, you come to appreciate more aspects and features of the game, especially if you've played the other older Need for Speed games before this one. So that's gonna be it. I guess in terms of polish, the game sometimes is still kind of, it reminds you that it's a 2002 game, but there's nothing you can do about a product of its time. And that was a lot of Need for Speed. So, thoughts, feelings, emotions. One thing I'm definitely gonna admit to saying is it's been one journey. I definitely enjoyed making videos and reviewing all of these classic games. Without the idea and concept of me making videos about them, I feel like, for example, the first Need for Speed game, I'd only ever played for like half an hour and then never again. Whereas if I turned it into a video, I'd be much more committed to playing it, discovering everything, and, you know, just like exposing every little feature about that first Need for Speed game. So it's been a fun ride. And then second off, I mean, I guess this is going to be like a totem pole of the games I played, in a totem pole in terms of preference. The one I definitely enjoyed playing the best would be Hot Pursuit 2. On a functionality point of view, it's definitely the game that's aged the best in my opinion. It's the most fun, it has the best music. It is the only PlayStation 2 title, which many might consider that to be unfair given all the other ones are PlayStation 1 games, but like I said in the beginning of the video, I feel like this game still doesn't get enough recognition to this day, which is why it is ultimately in this video to begin with, and it follows a lot of the formulas of the first Need for Speed games. Then second off, I think I'd put Porsche Unleashed. The concept of its career mode, I think, is very enjoyable and fascinating, even though I think a lot of the pursuit stuff, cop stuff, is very pushed to the side, unlike in the Hot Pursuit series. But I mean, for a 2000 game, I already mentioned in my review about the game that I do have my preferences and a few gripes with it, but other than that, yeah, I think it is still a solid entry. Then in third, I would be putting High Stakes. In my initial review, I thought of the game as just a carbon copy of Need for Speed Hot Pursuit 3, the third Need for Speed game, and the only thing that added was just a career mode. But that's what I actually enjoy most about the game now. It gives you an incentive to play the game. You know, it's not just like choose your own adventure, do it, whatever, come up with it yourself, that the first three Need for Speed games have, where it's just doodle around, give yourself an objective to do. In this game you have a career mode, and initially I also bashed the game for the controls, but after I got a physical PlayStation copy of the game, and I started playing that instead of emulation, that was much more enjoyable. Then in fourth place, I think I am just gonna put Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, because it is still a very enjoyable experience to this day, and yeah, I think it's a solid game still, definitely one that elevated the franchise further at the time, and it's a good entry. Then in fifth, I think I would just put Need for Speed 2, to be honest. There aren't many features that it improves upon in the first game. However, I think Need for Speed 2 is just a bit better polished. I think it's definitely a product of its time, but I think it's, I don't know, like, I just prefer it. And then I wouldn't say in dead last is the first Need for Speed game ever, the Need for Speed, but it kind of really is. Like, I feel like every other game that came out after the Need for Speed improves upon the formula and the franchise, and there is nothing wrong with that. It is definitely a game that stands the test of time, and in some elements it's pretty difficult to tolerate, and in other areas it is very nostalgic or intriguing. And with that, that's gonna be it. That was basically everything I wanted to cover. Thank you guys so much for watching through this series, if you did, or if you joined in halfway, or you just happened to find me somewhere out of nowhere. I mean, I just want to take the time to say thank you for watching my content, and I hope to be delivering much more to you this year than last year. That's gonna be it. Leave a like, subscribe, it's free, and peace out!